Antony had always been a hard worker, dedicating himself to providing a good life for his wife and their 2 children. He always believed that one day he would fulfill his greatest desire, to buy a big house, as the one they lived in was already too small for his family after the arrival of their youngest son, Enzo, who now slept with him and his wife, but soon would need a room of his own since the other room was occupied by his 6-year-old sister, Laura. Enzo was already 3 months old, and Antony promised his wife that before the youngest turned 1, they would move to a bigger and more comfortable house where there would be rooms for everyone, and an extra one for guests. Time was passing. Now Enzo was 8 months old, and the McRae family was still in the small, cramped house in the south of the state. One day, at the end of the workday, Antony was called for a conversation in Raul's office, the company's director. So, the dedicated employee went to his boss's office to hear what he had to say. "Good afternoon, Mr. Raul. I came as soon as I finished my duties for the day. Sorry for being a few minutes late." "Hello, Antony. No problem. I'll be brief in what I have to tell you." Antony became worried, thinking of the worst, of being fired. His expression changed. A mixture of concern and sadness took over him, but his boss, noticing, said, "Why the worried face? I called you here because I'm promoting you. You'll now be our new coordinator at the branch we opened last week in the north of the state. Unless you don't want to." "I do, and you can be sure you won't be disappointed, sir." Raul explained everything to the new coordinator of the northern branch. 5 times higher salary. A new house for him and his family, not with 4 bedrooms, but 5, one more than Antony desired. And even with a swimming pool and a large patio for the children to play. It was perfect, until his boss mentioned a small detail. "You'll also get a car, fitting for your new position. However, there's a hurdle. The village where you'll live doesn't have a road access to cars to the main road leading to the city center and other places. It's an old village, but entirely refurbished for the company's workers. Your house is the biggest and most beautiful, but for now, the access is a trail in the middle of the woods, without lighting. We're waiting for approval from the city administration to build an asphalt road and install lampposts, which might take some time. So, for now, there will be this little problem that you, your family, and the other villagers will have to face. That's why the end-of-day schedule is before sunset, at 16 o'clock. So everyone will be home before nightfall. But there's lighting in the village. We installed a generator with enough power to illuminate the area. However, we couldn't extend it into the middle of the forest. As I said, we're waiting for authorization for that." Antony thought for a few seconds. It was all wonderful, better than he imagined. A road without lighting and access for cars wouldn't make him say no to his boss's invitation. "I accept. Okay, pack your things. Your move will be in 2 days. Don't worry about anything. We'll hire a company to take your belongings and those of the other villagers who will work at the company, sir." "May I ask a question?" "Yes, Antony. Speaking of moving, I just thought, how will they take our things to the new house if this path doesn't allow access for cars? Therefore not for trucks. How will they do it?" With a laugh, Raul replied, "Ha ha ha, don't worry about that. Just pack your things, and the moving company will take care of the rest. It's just a kilometer between the forest trail and the village." "Wow, all of that. I thought it was a shorter distance." "Well, it doesn't matter." 5 days later, the McRae family was already in their new home. The completely refurbished village was beautiful, and all the residents were very happy. Sarah, Antony's wife, was delighted with their new house. In addition to taking care of the children and household chores, she was also responsible for the village's garden. On the first day in the new house, she met Lauren, a woman with brown eyes, fair skin, and long black hair. They were very similar and quickly became friends. The company soon started its activities, and everything was organized. On the first day, Antony, at 16 o'clock, upon hearing the siren announcing the end of the workday, grabbed his things and left. He chatted with 2 colleagues on his way to the parking lot. Each got into their car, and they drove away. When he reached the end of the road, there was the long trail, where there was a large patio where the village residents should leave their cars and continue on foot. It was a very beautiful place, full of huge trees, with a passage between them. A narrow trail where only 2 people could walk side by side. As the villagers arrived to cross the forest, they walked in pairs until they reached home, fostering new friendships and conversations along the way. Antony was one of the first to pass through there. He hadn't noticed in the morning how beautiful that path was because he was too anxious on his first day as the coordinator of the new company. So, he didn't pay much attention. But now, on the way back, he couldn't stop admiring the place and, in the meantime, chatting with one of his neighbors and now colleague, Dylan, from the Western Branch. The first 2 weeks were great, but Anthony wanted to impress his superiors from the Southern Branch. So, he decided to stay longer at work to get ahead on his tasks and be more productive. On the first day of overtime, he didn't even notice that it was already dark. He opened the curtain of his office and looked outside, startled because the sun had been replaced by the moon. The clock showed 8 o'clock. Anthony quickly grabbed his things and left. On the road, he drove his car as fast as allowed, and when he reached the patio where the villagers' cars were parked, it took him a long time to find a spot. The patio was full of cars. Now he had to face the dark path through the forest to get home. Anthony walked in long, fast strides until suddenly he heard a noise coming from behind, sounding like footsteps. The coordinator of the Northern Branch didn't dare to look back and instinctively started running. The sound of footsteps also seemed to be of someone running after Anthony. He took his phone out of his pants pocket and tried to call Sarah, without success, because there was no signal on the phone. After running for a few meters, the footsteps following him ceased, much to Anthony's relief. So, he stopped running and didn't dare look back because the fear was immense and didn't allow him to do so. The anguish was interrupted when Anthony saw the lights of the village. He was only a few meters away when he passed through the main gate of the village. The relief was so great that he shouted, "I made it. It seemed like I was hours in the middle of this wilderness." Upon entering the house, Sarah was crying with worry, being comforted by Lauren. Meanwhile, Melissa, his daughter, was in the room with her little brother, trying to put him to sleep. Anthony recounted everything to Sarah and Lauren, both of whom were shocked by the story. "People here in the village are talking about a curse or legend. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's about the path from the village to the road. The trail in the woods has ghosts." Lauren warned. "What do you mean? What are they saying?" Anthony asked. "It's something similar to what you told us, about strange noises that sound like someone walking and whispers. And the legend says that we must never look back, under any circumstances, no matter how scared we are. Some residents from nearby areas have even said that we are crazy to come and live here because no one has passed through that ghost trail for a long time, and some people have disappeared after passing through it. That's why the mayor doesn't authorize building a road or putting up lampposts, so as not to awaken the ghosts," Lauren informed. The three of them talked for hours, not realizing the time passing until Lauren looked at the clock. "Wow, it's late. I'm going home. I have my tasks in the garden early tomorrow," she said. "That's true. We have a lot of work to do, and during this time, we'll continue our conversation," Sarah replied to her friend. The next day, Anthony's routine repeated itself, including leaving work later. It seemed like he wasn't concerned about Lauren's story or what had happened the previous day. The sound of footsteps, however, when he reached the trail in the dark forest, memories of the previous night gave him an idea, and he turned on the flashlight on his cell phone. "Easy, Anthony, it's just a kilometer. In a few minutes, this will be over," he muttered to himself in the middle of the woods. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps behind Anthony resurfaced once again. He pointed the flashlight in different directions but not behind him. He didn't want to risk it after hearing the stories. The sound became clearer, as if something was approaching. Finally, a whisper made Anthony look back. He saw nothing, directed the flashlight to see better, but nothing. Just the trail amidst the trees. He took a deep breath and turned back around. As he turned back to continue walking, Anthony felt something touch his shoulder. "Who are you?" Anthony shouted. Stay calm, it's not like you've seen a monster. My name is Piter," the figure replied. "Piter, you nearly scared me to death. I need some fresh air." After recovering from the fright, Anthony asked, "I don't remember you. Neither in the village nor at work. I'm sorry, but I don't recall you." "Impossible. I don't work with you, and I'm not from the Northern Branch village. I live a little beyond the village and have been taking this path for years," Piter explained. "There are houses beyond the village." "Yes, my house, about 3 kilometers past the village." "Wow, and you're not afraid to walk in this darkness?" Piter, scared. "I'm not anymore. I've gotten used to it." "Anthony, how do you know my name? It's on your badge." "Oh, that's right. I left work in a hurry and didn't even realize I was wearing it. You know how it is, this darkness, the stories, but since you read my badge, nice to meet you." "I'm Anthony. Don't look back," Piter suddenly said. "What did you say?" "You looked back, now you'll suffer the consequences." Ha ha ha, Piter couldn't contain his laughter. Then Anthony realized it was a prank and felt relieved. You almost had me convinced. I thought you were serious because people in the village are talking about not looking back on the forest trail, but I don't believe in those ghost stories. I believe, or maybe not, I don't know. That's it, the village gate. We've arrived, you have. I still have a bit further to go. Maybe we'll see each other around, on the trail, or in the city, Antony said, bidding farewell. After saying goodbye, Antony entered the village and watched the strange man until he disappeared into the darkness of the forest. The next afternoon, while at work, Antony called his wife to say he would be late, so she shouldn't worry because he had met a man who walked the same path at night to go home, a little beyond the village. That's what he told me, dear, that he lived a little beyond the village. About 3 kilometers away, Antony explained. Take care. I'll leave your food on the table in case you come home and the kids and I are already asleep. Sarah replied, I love you, dear. I love you too. This time, Antony was calm. It was all just a legend, and besides, he had met someone else who walked through the forest at night, someone to keep him company, he thought. As night fell and Antony finished his work, tired, he organized his office to leave for home. Hello, is anyone there? Peter, is that you? Antony asked as he entered the forest and heard the sound of footsteps. Once again, Peter touched Antony's shoulder, startling him. My God, you scared me again, Antony exclaimed. Don't be frightened. I saw you and hurried to catch up with you. It's good to have someone to talk to along the forest path. Yes, especially in this darkness. And today, I'm not feeling well. I have chills. The two continued forward until they heard another set of footsteps following them. Do you hear that, Peter? It sounds like we're being followed, Antony said. Keep walking and don't look back, Peter whispered. Antony couldn't resist and looked back. He turned around abruptly but saw nothing. I told you not to look back, Peter yelled angrily. I tell everyone, but it doesn't matter. You all look, and then you must suffer the consequences, he continued shouting at Antony. Peter's appearance began to change, his eyes turned black, and he seemed to grow larger, squeezing Antony against his chest and suffocating him. Antony tried to call for help, but the man with black eyes, now more like a creature or evil spirit, didn't allow it. He looked deep into Antony's eyes and let go, but Antony couldn't move. He was paralyzed. Then, Peter began to speak. I am the guardian of darkness. This forest is mine. No one can enter here at night unless they give me their soul and blood in return. I told you not to look back. I gave you a chance, but you still wanted to look. Many people have passed through here, and almost always, they look back. They shouldn't. And when they do, they belong to me. It's not true. Let me go. I won't tell anyone. Antony pleaded. Quiet. Everyone says the same thing, Peter retorted. Antony's pleas fell on deaf ears as Peter proceeded to extract Antony's soul. In mere moments, Antony's body withered away until there was nothing left. The creature from the darkness grunted and vanished into the night. Days passed, and authorities searched for Antony throughout the forest, town, and village, but his body was never found. His wife informed the sheriff about the mysterious man Antony had encountered, but she couldn't provide a name or description. All she knew was their conversation over the phone on the day he disappeared, mentioning a man living near the village in the forest. The sheriff explained that nobody lived in the described area and recounted tales of people who had disappeared in the forest years ago. With multiple unexplained disappearances, they closed the case. Antony's disappearance remained unsolved, leaving his wife and children in the village. With the help of the company's CEO, they planned to rebuild their lives there. Years later, Enzo, now 10 years old, ventured into the forest with a group of friends to play. They stayed past sunset, unaware of the time, until it was too dark to find their way back. Enzo lagged behind, munching on some fruits he brought for a snack. As the night enveloped the forest, he heard a noise and, without a second thought, turned around. Pleasure to meet you, I'm Peter. Don't look back, young man, a voice echoed through the darkness.